It is the Final Word cricket podcast, the boarding of Asker Daily. Adam Collins and Geoff Lemon on a day where it rained and rained and rained some more, which makes your 30-second summary pretty easy, Geoff. It'll be from Maurice Blackburn Lawyers, the number one plaintiff law firm in Australia. CBUS Super, get your super sorted out in their 40th anniversary year. More on other stuff later. Go.
30 seconds. I could do 2 seconds on each over that we had bowled. 13.2 overs bowled. Rohit Sharma won the toss and elected to bowl. What are you doing? I'm going to say that now before this innings is finished. Daft decision. Don't understand why he did it. We'll go more into that. McSweeney and Khawaja still there. And nothing really happened. India bowled badly, bit too short, bit too wide. Akash Deep looked good for a minute and that was it. 28 runs, none for.
28 runs in 13.2 overs. Usman Khawaja, to use my Harsha Bogla impersonation. 19 not out from 47 with a couple of lovely pulled boundaries. Nathan McSweeney, 4 from 33 as Bharat Sundaresan briefly pops his head into the commentary box and collects his belongings, I'd imagine. There was 2 rain delays, one at none for 13 from memory. Then they got back on for 40 minutes and we thought they would get on, and that was not to be. Interesting you've got such a strident view on the toss. I mean, I would have thought that it's pretty early to make that call, given the pitch.
It's not about what happened. It's about, it's about it was the call at the toss. I mean, I just thought, like, you look at the records here, you look at what happens here, you look at, it's nice to bat first here. You make big scores batting first here. Teams do it all the time.
Interesting. So Australia won the last 2 times Australia have won here. They popped in the opposition, had them 4 down it. So Australia were clearly bowling. Cummins answer at the toss. Cummins was going to bowl first. Australia have done it to good effect here. I just think that Rohit did as most people said before the toss. I don't think I met anyone that said they were going to bat. So I don't know whether he was against the grain on that thought.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is just purely from my perspective, is that, like we were saying in the preview, I think teams get sucked in by the fact that it's a bit green, but it's actually usually still a really good batting pitch, and it's usually to your advantage to bat first here. Teams tend to make big scores. You look at the scores this century, 24 innings, first innings here this century before this test match, 15 of them have been above 300, 10 of them have been above 400. Teams tend to go big batting first here. And it seemed to me like a defensive move from Rohit. It seemed less about we're going to get out there and bowl them out and more about I'm worried about my batters ending up 5 or 6 down, not long after the lunch break. It seemed like it was a timid move because he was worried about the form of his batting side rather than a really bold, proactive kind of move to back his bowlers.
But would have it been seen the same way had Australia made the same decision?
I don't know. That's I suppose.
Because aren't they the one with the brittle top 4?
They also have a brittle top 4.
So in other words, neither team can bowl first without being accused of that, right?
Yeah.
So
but I think that's
the only way to avoid that qualification, because it happens any time that a team wins the toss and fields in Test cricket. If it doesn't work out by lunch on the first day,
totally,
they're smashed. I think today, cliched as it is, and I put this on Twitter at the time, it was your classic good toss to lose day, because both teams would have desperately wanted to have bowled, and both teams wouldn't have wanted to have made the decision to have bowled, owing to the fact that when they bowl first, they get the critique you afforded off the top that, you didn't back your batters sufficiently well enough. But most of I reckon the data in Australia, working thesis, I don't know whether there's anything to this, I reckon the data in Australia, what we've seen in Shield cricket, is that since the kookaburras have been like steel reinforced, with the extra lacquer and the extra protection to the seam that they put in before the 21-22 season, it feels like data started again. It feels like everything that happened before that with the old kookaburra ball, and you want to go another 5 years back from that, the pitches that were with the older technology with drop-ins, acknowledging it's a bit different here at the Gabba, but with drop-in pitches in especially Melbourne, but other places around the country that were habitually giving us these horrible, dreadful days at work. I don't really remember many of those recently. I don't remember many days of Test cricket in Australia since 2021 where bat has comprehensively dominated ball with the pitch playing a role in that. I might be wrong, because it feels to me like the ball has helped level things up. Maybe even overbalanced at times.
Maybe we're in a different world now. Maybe everything is junk. Maybe we just quick visit and say since records began, and that's
since the kookaburra got fixed.
In like 2019 and 2020, and everything sits there. Is the only
since the pandemic, maybe
the only data that we actually use. So I suppose what I'm saying is that yes, there is an element of optics to it, right? And maybe it shouldn't matter what people think outside and all of the kind of inside-outside division that we get when you talk to cricket teams these days, and they're all about what's happening in the inner sanctum and we don't care about everything out there. But there's just sometimes vibes matter, sometimes the vibe that you put through your team matters. And maybe Rohit in the rooms gave him a Churchillian speech and said, we're going to get out there and tear these guys apart with the new kookaburra because it's got extra lacquer and a bigger seam and all the rest of it. but it just still feels like you could wonder whether he thought that his batters were any good, even if you were one of those batters. You could wonder if it was a defensive move.
I'd be shocked if Rohit Sharma was taking in that kind of information and then processing it in a way that you're saying. I just can't fathom a world where he's looking at his top six and saying, "Oh fuck, I'm worried about us getting through the new ball on day one." I suspect it's more that we've been pumped in Adelaide by 10 wickets. The game so far, look at the averages against Bumrah in this series. It's remarkable. Everyone has got a single-digit average against Bumrah in Australia's top six, apart from Travis Head. He'd be thinking, well, now that's probably to me more the conversation today. Is Bumrah carrying something? I know that was questioned between test matches. I know that he was proven fit.
Apparently he was pretty pissed off about that, though. Bumrah was annoyed about that.
Fair enough. It's on the basis of one over and a little bit of a niggle when he was batting, wasn't it? Was he batting when he did the groin? I think it was his batting.
Might have been.
Either way, he didn't look like he had... Very, very small sample size. Everything caveated. Didn't have the same type of energy that he had in his first spells at either Adelaide or specifically Perth, which was a world-beating spell. And lots of things can buy into that. I reckon that Rohit would have thought the average for first innings in this series so far is 18 per batter, and that is the lowest in the last decade, apart from one test played between England and Ireland back in 2019 at Lords. The start of test matches is playing a big role. Day one, wickets are tumbling for probably the reasons you state about the fragility of the respective top orders.
Yeah.
And he would have thought, well, Australia have got the chance to bowl us out for 150 and 180 on day one rather, in the first two. I'm going to see whether my bloke Bumrah can do the same here and make the best of any conditions that are there. Also mindful that it was steamy overheads. It was raining this morning. When I got here, the rain had stopped. But it just, I know the atmospherics aren't meant to help the swing, but it's like a placebo effect, I think, when it's humid and it's cloudy. I know that like the scientists say it doesn't matter, but I think above the shoulders it does matter for bowlers, especially on day one.
NASA, the space agency, says it doesn't matter. NASA Hussain says it matters. Who are you going to trust?
I know who I'm trusting. I know he bowled first out here. And all the rest of it, but that doesn't. You know.
If they wanted to get some people off the space station, they could do worse than ask NASA Hussain to chip in. He'd probably have some useful input.
Can we free NASA, by the way?
From this?
From NASA
from 2002. Yeah, I mean,
I reckon that
I've been making that argument for years. That and this is a bit at odds with what I'm saying today. That bowling first is fine. Like you say, a captain who bats first and their team gets smashed up, they never get criticised for batting first.
Exactly.
They get criticised for having bad batters. A team that bowls first and loses, it's because you bowled first. That is wrong. And then within that, I'm saying in this particular instance, based on the deceptive nature of the pitch here, and based on the history that batting first is, generally a really good thing to do here, I still think it's the wrong call. Like, I don't think Nasser Hussain made the right call, but I don't think he deserved to have it talked about for the next 20 odd years.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be bringing it up now. And also, equally, I don't think Rohit Sharma should be being smashed up in 20 years' time if for having bowled first if things don't go right for India here. But I also don't think he should have bowled first.
I think if anything, the pitch might have talked him out of it. I was out there in the middle before play, and it was like, geez, it feels like a bowl first day. Fucking feels like bowl first right now. Everyone felt the same way. But the pitch, it didn't have I think Flem described it best, it didn't have the thatchy grass of Adelaide. So if anything...
The Margaret
thatchy grass. So, I take your point about deceptive pitches and green mumbas, and often New Zealand is where you get that, right? Yeah. Where you see a pitch that looks green.
Flat as a tack.
But eventually becomes brown in its complexion quite quickly oftentimes. Here, this morning, the pitch didn't look that green. It was like, oh, actually, maybe we do bat. So ultimately, like, you've got to, because of the psychology of Test cricket, when you elect to field first, you've got to deliver. That's undoubtedly true. And I think that with 13.2 overs bowled, it's too early to give a definitive read on that. I mean, Khawaja did make the best of a couple of opportunities to pull the ball. If anything, the best thing you can say about Australia's day was it was pretty quiet.
Pretty quiet.
I mean, the ball beat the bat, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, maybe.
Yeah,
but they were building some
bowled
pressure.
One really nice ball, and then Akashdeep bowled a couple of overs and looked quite likely. And I kept going back to what we said before Adelaide, which is pick the swing bowler for Adelaide, or what I was saying. You wanted Harshit Rana to stay.
I thought Harshit Rana swung the ball in Perth enough that you'd want to play him in Adelaide. But Akashdeep, who had that ridiculous first spell in Test cricket at Ranchi earlier this year with the overstep, no ball, stumps flying, then bowling Crawley, nicking off Duckett, blowing Pope's pad off second ball. Like, there's enough there with with Akashdeep that you can see a proper cricketer under the hood there. And they were, to be fair, between overs, say 11 and 13, that pressure was building. Like the preconditions for a wicket falling were there. The runs had stopped and the ball was moving around more. So it might have been a case of their second mini session was better than their first mini session. But yeah, taken as a whole, it definitely didn't feel like the energy of Perth, which might be the outlier. You don't get days that feel like Perth very often. They are wild affairs, and we celebrate them when they arrive. Most Test cricket is more like none for 28 from 13.2.
Yes, which is, again, why I think maybe you don't want to be bowling first. But I suppose if it had been one of those patchy rain days where they had to come back 3 or 4 times, which is probably what the forecast made it look more like it would be,
absolutely,
then bowling is an advantage at that point because you keep disrupting the batters' innings, their concentration, all the rest of it. But yes, Siraj was poor. There were balls down the leg side.
He battled Siraj. I was surprised by that.
Like balls coming off the pads to the fine leg boundary and all that.
Yeah, I was surprised by Siraj looking just again, it's all naked eye stuff, right? No, it just looked like he was down on energy, which he may not have been. It's improbable he's watching this if you're watching. It just looks like his first spell, he didn't have that get up and go that we've seen at Perth and Adelaide and throughout his international career so far. Who knows why? But he gets the chance to wake up tomorrow having only bowled a few overs and can get up and do the whole thing again.
Yeah, I don't think he really likes the crowd being on his back. Like I think because he's quite emotional and demonstrative. That's happened. He's got himself into the situation where he's drawn attention in that way, but I don't think he responds well to it. Really, like he seems like quite an emotional character, and hence the celebration appeals and the running around and getting in tiffs with people and all of that sort of stuff. But when it comes at him relentlessly, he doesn't seem to feed off that in the way that some players do.
Yeah, this is where there's this people who know him well, and that's definitely not us, present a picture of a quite a calm guy. Who and it's at odds with that perception that you see him out in the middle. Some players need that. We know that. I typically think my usual assumption is that it's overdone, overwrought, and it can be counterproductive. But I suppose Siraj has got a pretty useful Test career behind him so far. So,
but I guess India have the advantage now that they didn't bowl much. They didn't do much to the ball, and they can go off and take a few deep breaths and regroup and figure out how they need to bowl tomorrow and effectively start again. They effectively get day one again tomorrow morning.
At 9:50, I don't think that's an irrelevant point here. Half an hour earlier in Australia when you lose the play. So Test cricket, I don't think I've ever been at a day's Test cricket in Australia that's begun before 10 a.m. because typically we start at 10:30 local time. It's been wound back to 10:20 in the last couple of years due to lining it up with television basically, and because we're in Queensland, they make that adjustment as well. So 9:50 local time, that'll be an element, an extra half an hour, which should be to the advantage of the fielding team. You normally think when you start earlier. We've seen that in one-day cricket when it starts a little bit too early. 99 World Cup, this was talked about all the time as being a factor in all of that. So time will tell on that front. Geoff, I think it's time to just take a brief pause and return for our Hall of Fame. The final word, daily. Boarding of Asker daily. It's from Adam Collins and Geoff Lemon as ever. There's another daily in the feed, by the way. You can catch up with what's going on at Hamilton at the Tron with Jeremy Vernon Coney and Cameron, don't know his middle name, Ponsonby. He's
probably got about 7 of them.
Most likely. He's got a prefix.
I bet there's a Beauclerk in there.
Yeah. He's got something at the front of his name. Not sure how it goes in the middle. I
always like that when you're in America and you book something and you've got the drop-down menus for, put your name in, put your are you Mr. or Doctor or whatever.
Or the Honourable.
But then they have like one at the end for if you're the second or the third or the fourth. If you're like Davis Harrigan the third or something.
Or Esquire. Esquire. All the mail I get from MCC addresses me at Esquire. I didn't realise that. I thought you had to be. This is my ignorance showing through. I thought you had to be a lawyer to claim Esquire.
No, I think Esquire is just anyone basically, but it's just kind of a gentleman, a common gentleman of the masses, cosplay bullshit.
Yeah. Anyway, Adam Collins Esquire, according to the letters I get in the mail from time to time. Our Final Word Hall of Fame is brought to you by Maurice Blackburn Lawyers, #1 plaintiff law firm in Australia. Great to see some more of our friends at Maurice Blackburn at our live show with Harsha Bogle the other night, which was a beautiful thing, having Harsha there, but also having our friends from Maury Bees there as they wind down towards Christmas over there, but their hard work will not stop, Geoff. In 2025, they will be out there fighting for you,
lawyering,
working for you, lawyering, because if most of their work's done on a no-win, no-fee basis, because they want to make sure that the legal system is affordable, and that if you end up in a workplace incident and you feel like this is just so bloody intimidating, how do I navigate through the legal system? They are there for you to help with these types of situations. So all their information's in the show notes. If At any point through the Christmas period, you need their legal assistance. There's 30 offices in Australia, but just as easy to get them on the blower or on the internet, because that's what people do these days. And cbussuper.com.au, well, if you've been listening to the show for a long time, you know what they do. If you don't, they provide superannuation. What's that? That's the retirement savings, Geoff. The retirement savings for hardworking Australians.
Yep.
That means that when they retire, they have a stream of income, a stream of revenue on a consistent basis.
There you go. That's the thing. That's all you need. Once you finish, once your working days are done.
8.87 average return across the 40 years they've been in operation. Their past performance is not a reliable indicator of future performance, but we're very glad that they have that 8.87% average return in their default MySuper account to talk about.
The Hall of Fame.
Yes.
What is on the Hall of Fame today? There was just one of those rain days, just one of those radar reading days, just one of those, when do we have to be back on? I love that nobody in cricket knows when we have to be back on. Like, there are maybe 3 scorers in the ground who actually know the times and can figure them out immediately. Everyone else has to think about it or ask 5 other people.
Well, that was going to be one of my nominations. I knew we were getting back on in 15 minutes at the first rain delay because I saw Illy do the international sign for 15, which is 10 then 5 with his hands. So I was able to report that in real time as he walked off the field here.
Do you think he goes scuba diving? Do you reckon he knows like the sign for a shark? You put this doesn't work very well on a podcast, but you put an open palm up against your forehead side on for a shark. That's a shark.
He knows. He really knows the hand movements to baby shark really well. He's grandma shark, granddad shark.
You can do you can do like a halo around your head for an angelfish if you're scuba diving.
I just like the idea of Richard Illingworth at the end of the song. There's this bit he goes, "Let's go hunt," and you go running, chasing after all the kids like Richard Illingworth going. I'm not implying anything there, by the way. Just more the optics of Richard Illingworth running around in the middle of the baby shark.
Umpire shark.
Shark.
Well, while we're talking about umpires and while we're talking about one half of the Dicks, Richard Illingworth and Richard Kettleborough. Richard Kettleborough is my Hall of Fame nomination for the day, because not for anything he did in the middle of the field, but because when he came wandering around to tell the teams that they were about to call it off, and then he was wandering back, and there were a bunch of hardy Indian supporters who decided to stick it out to the bitter end, and they were down at the fence, and they went, "Sir, Mr. Kettleborough, selfie." And so he went, "Okay then." So he came over with his umbrella and started taking selfies with the Indian fans. Now, I'm going to say there are a lot of Indian cricket team supporters over the years who have not been big fans of Richard Kettleborough.
They formed the view that he is.
Some of his
there's
decisions,
a conspiracy that he's at the heart of.
Yes,
and that he's operating in order to do over Indian teams.
Right.
That's true.
And what had happened is that as one of the best umpires in the world, he frequently umpired high-level matches in which India was featuring.
Yes.
And sometimes decisions in those matches went against India, and sometimes he made those decisions.
You got it.
Those are all things that did happen, which tend to happen when umpires make decisions that are largely correct. Anyway, I enjoyed the fact that there were people with their Team India jerseys happily taking snaps with Richard Kettleborough, and I hope they show them to all their friends and remember the day. Remember the day I met Big Dick Kettleborough.
Did you get a chance on the weekly show to talk about what happened last week at Adelaide with him? With that decision? I heard a well-sourced story, which I never reported because I'm a bad journalist, that he didn't have access to the camera with the Mitch Marsh one. You know, the Mitch Marsh one, how everyone could see that it hit Marsh on the pad first, not when he was on naught, that he was saved by an inside edge that wasn't.
Oh,
right.
Okay, I thought you were talking about the outside edge.
No, this is the inside edge from earlier that wasn't. Right. But the camera that was front on, that we all saw, I'm like, how did he not possibly
see that?
The third umpire doesn't have access to that camera in this series.
Why?
Not sure, but I'm just telling you. Someone told me.
Okay.
So this is a process problem. Huh. And there's also ultra edge and snicko at odds. In some countries it's one, some countries it's the other. So anyway, that's not really one for me. If I were, again, a better journalist,
don't know which one's which.
I would have done the research.
Which one's better, which one's
sorted it out.
Snicko really satisfies.
The other Hall of Fame I had, just watching Virat today, a couple of things. This is probably less Hall of Fame, more just like I like the body language. He went up to Bumrah after 2 overs and really wanted to tell him something, but kind of like he was captain. And then before they came out for the second mini session, it was Virat who was like almost addressing Rohit when Rohit was in the middle of the huddle. Yeah. Really interesting body language there. So anyone who thinks that Virat's checked out, he ain't. He ain't checked out. Virat's still very much desperate to do everything he can to be an influence on this team for the positive. Last bit of like slightly newsy stuff is that everyone thinks that days like today, Cricket Australia will go broke because they have to pay out the refund because it's 100%. That's not the case. They're insured, so nothing from today hits the bottom line of Cricket Australia.
How do you get that? Must be a bloody expensive policy.
They do it. It's different in each city. in each stadium, and it involves, like any market, I suppose, they form their view. They're betting on the risk of this, and there's meteorologists involved, presumably, at the insurance firms that work on this, and I expect would have a different premium for different cities. But yeah, I learnt that information late today from someone towards the top of CA that
I can't see how that works. I can't see how that works, because if you're an insurance company, you have to eventually take in more money than you pay out. That's how the gig works.
Yeah. So if you're paying the premium
over time must add up to be more than what the payouts are.
So how often would you have a full day washed out at Brisbane is the question, right?
Right.
I mean, I don't know the answer, but I can't remember one in my lifetime.
Yes.
Can you? Just off the top of my head, has there been a full day washed out at Brisbane since we've covered the national team? I don't think so.
Not since we were covering it.
So let's call it a once in a 20 year.
New Zealand in 2001.
Right. So let's call it a once in a 20-year event, right? So whatever that, so you can kind of see.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know the ins and outs of the policy. I'm not saying that, but I do know there is a policy. So that's my other Hall of Fame nomination. Hey, I should note that Kabaddi, great response to this last week. Thank you to everyone who got in touch. Kabaddi, 28th of December at the
It's
John
the Kabaddi
Cain
All-Stars,
Arena.
Adam. It's the Kabaddi All-Stars. They're bringing Kabaddi All-Stars from India, and they're going to play a team of Australian rules footballers.
It's really cool, and it's going to be on telly in India, and it's going to be all over the internet. We're going to be there, 28th of December, and the footballers include a bunch of very high-profile guns from kind of those who have almost like just retired. They're still physically very capable. They just don't play AFL at the highest level anymore. This is going to be a huge event, so try and get yourself down to John Cain. We're going to try and shoot the podcast from there that night, and maybe some other stuff if we're able to negotiate it. We'll see how we go. So that's something to watch out for. And the other thing, I've got the more casual T20 vision glasses today. These are the ones that
like the street ones.
These are the street ones. These are really cool. Bharat's been getting around in the blue, the big blue Larry ones. Yep. I can't remember which ones they're called. There's the flare ones that Maxi's been wearing, the gold,
the big ones,
the big gold ones, and the big blue ones. And they're all great, and they're at a discount because you know us, T20 Vision. .com/final word. It's in the show notes. Click the link and you'll be able to get your discount of 10% on glasses that are pretty affordable as it is compared to their competitors, and get yourself a pair for Christmas, or somebody else who, even my wife, who is critical of most things that I wear, she's like, those glasses you're wearing are really, really nice. So she's in favour of
there
these.
There we go. Rachel approved.
Rachel approved glasses, T20 Vision.
Get yourself a pair and Rachel will say something nice to you.
Maxi sunglasses.
There we go. This has been the Final Word Daily. Australia, India, Border Gavaskar Trophy. Go to patreon.com/thefinalword if you want to get more involved in what we are doing. Geoff Lemon, Adam Collins. Subscribe to things, share the links around. You know what to do. You'll figure it out. We'll see you for day 2.
Good night.